Man is a unique creation. In our world, there's no more perfect and accurate mechanism than our body, form and develop under the influence of a certain geographical area, so that humanity is divided into races, differing skin color, hair eye, growth physique, skull structure, faces and many others naturally act on us and the same, more global conditions, such as gravity, atmosphere and other stuff like that. Each time diving into new conditions, we keep changing. But the question arises, how hard and how fast? Suggest heading out on a small space trip on the planets of the solar system to check what will happen to us in completely different conditions. Already in orbit of our planet, we're getting higher by about 3%. That is, if on Earth your height was 180 centimeters, then in space it will increase to 185 centimeters. Due to the weakening of gravity, the spine of the astronaut relaxes and expands. One change in human growth is temporary, and a few months later, after returning to Earth, we're going back to the original growth. Every few months, conducted in space, astronauts lose 1 to 2% of their bone mass. Most often they lose bone mass in the lower body, especially in the lumbar vertebrae and legs. This process is known as cosmic osteopenia. Very soon, you will begin to suffer from constant sweating. And here we are not talking about space sauna. The fact is that weightlessness leads to that there is no natural heat transfer. Heat the body does not rise from the skin, and the body constantly heats up in an attempt to cool down. Moreover, since the constant flow of sweat does not drip or evaporate, heat just accumulates. On the red planet, in low gravity, heart muscles no need to work so hard and shrink fast to pump blood through the circulatory system. How on earth so the heart of the Martian will become weaker? In Earth conditions, it just can't handle the load. Mars is much farther from the sun than Earth. Red planet gets half as much light. Because of this, colonists' eyes can change. Either the brain develops a new way, allowing retinas perceive and process more light from what is. Either over time, colonists' eyes will get bigger, in the sense of wider. And something else important, there is little sunlight on the red planet, but ultraviolet radiation. Thin Martian atmosphere misses many times more than Earth on our planet. For ultraviolet protection, skin produces the pigment melanin, or rather it's a kind of eomelanin, which acts like a natural sunscreen and gives the skin a brown tint. People who eomelanin will have more, will be able to better resist extreme ultraviolet radiation on the red planet. So the skin of the Martians will be much darker than anyone on Earth. Well, there's a small perspective here. True in reality, same. Hope for human evolution on other planets. Not yet. You still have to hope for the development of technology, which will allow future Mars colonizers exist in an artificially created environment and protect them from the destructive atmosphere, the red planet. And we are gaining speed. Flying further, we are waiting for a series of gas giants, and first stop Jupiter. If you will fall on it from a great height, you will most likely be killed by very strong radiation, even before approaching the planet's atmosphere. If you survived it and reached the upper layers of the atmosphere, then rush through them at a speed of 180,000 kilometers per hour, approximately at an altitude of 250 kilometers. you will reach the ammonia clouds and feel the temperature of -150 degrees Celsius and strong winds. Hurricanes in Jupiter's hydrogen atmosphere reaches speeds of more than 480 kilometers per hour. And yes, the pressure here is already enough to kill. If this is not for you, then after 12 hours of continuous fall, you will be in the lower atmosphere, where impenetrable darkness reigns. Pressure is 2,000,000 times Earth's, and the temperature is higher than on the surface of the Sun. There is simply no time for change, but either as an option, only in dust. Continue the journey. Before us, Saturn. True, he is a little different from Jupiter. Wind speed on Saturn can reach places 1,800 kilometers per hour, which is much more than on Jupiter. If you get into the atmosphere of a planet, then you will crush with monstrous pressure and destroy extreme temperatures. Attractive may be the rings of the planet, but hurry to disappoint you. Yes, just a large cluster of small particles of ice and dust floating in space. It's harder to resist them than on a skit. It is not possible to live there. How about spending a vacation on Urani? If you are looking for a place to relax, then this is what you need. 2-week Earth vacation on this planet will last a whole 3 years. Even the sea is true from ammonia. Together with an inflatable mattress, you will need a thermal imager to see in the dark and thick tow loop. Not to freeze. Want pressure, temperature, radiation, no fly on. Neptune is another gas planet. Ice giant. Temperature in the upper atmosphere is close to -120 C. And in the center of Neptune, temperature reaches up to 7,000 C, which is comparable to the temperature on the surface of the Sun. In the atmosphere of the planet raging the strongest winds among the planets of the solar system. According to some estimates, their speeds can reach 600 meters/second. What about the composition of the atmosphere? Here to the forecast is disappointing. Methane, myoc, and even water, but true in the lower atmosphere, which will be very difficult to get to. The wind will just take you away, overcoming you from suicide. Either need to turn into something heavier. Either you will soar to old age around the planet in its upper layers. Possibly, you will need massive wings or superpower to somehow change their position. Seems our journey has come to an end. The flight was pretty long, and it's time to return to our home abode. Hope that humanity has yet to discover new worlds, habitable to build megacities on Mars, and explore the satellites of the gas giants. And while we live here, on a unique planet, where all the conditions for the emergence of, development and life of living organisms, including human, on a planet with rich, amazing and unique in beauty nature. The 19th of October 2017, based on data from the Pan-STARRS 1 telescope, unremarkable was discovered in Hawaii, at first glance moving, faint glowing object. At this point he was at a distance of 30 million kilometers from the ground. Initially discovered comparatively small space body. Seemed pretty ordinary. There are dozens in the solar system, and maybe hundreds of 1,000 asteroids. Comets open every day, and in large quantities. Most of them are between the orbits and Mars, and Jupiter beyond the orbits of Neptune and Pluto, so-called Ax Camperae. Also an Oort cloud, the physical area surrounding our solar system, and is a source. Long periodic comets and asteroids, but the new space wannabe carried a real sensation. Astronomers found out what is this space body is not the brainchild of our solar system, and flew to us from distant stars, becoming thus first recorded interstellar object in history. He entered our system at 30 kilometers per second. By extremely high, hyperbolic orbit, almost at right angles to the ecliptic plane. Piercing it inside the orbit of Mercury, became known that at the time of its opening, it's been 40 days since that, as he flew his closest point to the Sun. Originally discovered object was considered a comet, announcing it the 25th of October 2017, and assigning a comet designation. C2017U1 even then was known unusual. Hyperbolic orbit, and in an attempt to confirm cometary activity, same day at a very large telescope in LT. Using camera force 2 were conducted unscheduled observations on the program urgently. First interstellar object in the solar system, but on the resulting deep combined images, no comet coma has been detected. That is, gas shells around the core. Respectively, C2017U1 was renamed in He2017YU1, becoming at the beginning of the first comet, but then reclassified by Vastera. Team working within the Pan-STARRS program assigned an open object its own name, Oumuamua or Oumuamua, what in Hawaiian means scout, or came from afar. Worth noting that the variant of the name Rams was also considered in honor of the alien ship, found under similar circumstances. Science fiction novel by Arthur Clarke. Dates with Rama. So Oumuamua, discovered as the first interstellar object, created by its existence, the International Astronomical Union, precedent in terms of its designation. For this purpose, a special index was introduced for it and other interstellar objects like it. Capital letter of the Latin alphabet AI is an abbreviation of the English word interstellar. What does interstellar mean in translation? End up for Oumuamua. Assigned the final title, 1/2/017S1. Researchers previously suggested that interstellar guest is made of stone and has an elongated cigar-like shape, from 300 meters in length and from 30 to 40 meters in width. However, another group of astrophysicists came to different conclusions, that the Oumuamua object has a much flatter shape, something resembling a pancake or a cookie. Of course, space. The object continues over time, getting thinner. But the new data did not end there. With the William Herschel Space Telescope, object spectrum was obtained, which pointed the uniformity of red color over its entire surface, which is similar to many objects inhabiting search opera. Red color cosmic bodies transform as a result. Received radiation by cosmic rays, particularly high-energy particles protons. Besides, the light can be explained, and the presence of a heavily weathered surface. Nonetheless, researchers almost confidently state that mysterious object of heterogeneous ice. They calculated, how fast does ice like that have to sublimate? That is, go from solid to gas, during Oumuamua passing by the Sun. The repulsion force was also calculated, mass form objects and albedo. Reflectivity of ice. Then obtained data. Astrophysicists compared with the characteristics of different ice and came to a conclusion, what is most accurate to them, matching only one ice. Solid nitrogen, a similar material familiar to the scientist, as it is observed on the surface of Pluto. The authors of this hypothesis believe that Oumuamua can consist of exactly the same material. The researchers also calculated the speed with which pieces of solid nitrogen ice could break away from the surface of Pluto and similar bodies at the stage of our formation. Solar system. This led them to conclude that Oumuamua could be part of the planet, similar to Pluto, located in another star system. But a little later, the 27th of June 2018, country we declared that AMU-AMO is still more moderate active comet. Rather than an asteroid, this was determined by measuring non-gravitational acceleration of the object, which is consistent with the comet's digasification model. On object speed, strong influence turned out to be our Sun. Flying closer to him, object was starting to speed up, and as if pushed away from him. And this acceleration push was more powerful. What could be explained? The object had no tail and epoch for the comet. Therefore question, what is an object AMU-AMO? Hung again, and we will continue the investigation. This space object was rotating in space along 3 axes over time. What is the like to throw up? Period of such rotation. A MOMO lies within 7 to 8 hours. With a brightness amplitude of 1 integer 8/10 magnitude. Dry surface, unusual shape and mysterious trajectory of movement. AMU-AMO was even forced by some explorers to wonder, is this object probe of alien civilization, but believe that inside this object sits an alien with hard. Yes, it is really a mysterious object, but some clues, such as its color and lack of radio emission, points to that AMU-AMUA is still an object. Natural origin. A little later, a computer model or script has been developed, which explain the essence of the characteristics of this object and its amazing features. Script featured that AMU-AMO is actually a planetary body shard, which came very close to the star, then was torn apart by tidal forces. The fragment was ejected into interstellar space, turbulent flow. When bodies fly past a massive object, they are exposed to powerful tidal forces, gravitational field of the star, and attracts object so hard that it can deform and even collapse. This effect was observed, for example, in the 4th year, when comet Shoemaker's Levi 9 came too close to Jupiter, and tidal forces shattered it into 21 separate fragments. All parts of the comet crashed into the atmosphere of the gas giant. In their model, the researchers simulated how are deformed, then the icy ones are destroyed, or stony pieces of different sizes, when they get close to the star. Modeling showed that tidal forces at that close range from a star can not only tear an object apart, well, and also elongated flat fragments may form, such as, for example, AMU-AMO. Similar form arises because of that smaller fragments heat up and merge under the influence of tidal forces. At the same time, these fragments are accelerated to such an extent that capable escape from your planetary system. Speed in interstellar space at AMU-AMO is almost 30 kilometers per second. However, the attraction of the Sun, with time pass, made it speed up to top speed in the pen of helium 88 kilometers/second, passing the peak of its hyperbolic orbit. Object several changed direction and passing under the orbits of Mercury and Earth, crossed again in reverse. Ecliptic plane, in the space between the Earth's orbits and Mars, leave now our solar system towards the constellation Pegasus. Further, same AMU-AMO speed will slow down to speed indicators with which he arrived in our system. Suppose too that the object will finally leave the limits of our system somewhere in 20 years. Now reliably unknown. How long did AMU-AMO travel among the stars? It could be hundreds, 1 million, and even billions of years. Calculating the correct movement of the object, astronomers have concluded that he was moving in our direction, from the stars to the constellation Lyra. For example, from Vega, his way would make up about 600,000 years. However, 600,000 years ago, Vega and other nearby stars were totally in the wrong place, where or through which AMU-AMO flew. So at this point it is assumed what threw him out from one of the star systems in the constellation Carinae about 45 million years ago, which now As a result of the process, and noticeably during this time, shifted in our firmament to yoga, considering all the unique properties, this interstellar object, a logical question arises. Why not send an umbrella to Amu and check? Is it a ship of an extraterrestrial civilization, alien probe, comet or asteroid? And yes, the 30th of October 2017 Project Lyra was developed. Mission will build an umbrella and send him to the Amalomo flying away at that time. The problem is that this interstellar object was discovered then, when he was already on his escape route from the solar system. And it moves very fast, 88 kilometers a second. Even the fastest spacecraft ever created by man, and this is Zone Parker, has a top speed of about 95 kilometers per second. Planning and equipment research space mission. It's a complicated and lengthy process if you look at it realistically. Then to equip the mission to Amu will need, by the most modest calculations, at least 5 years. But besides technical and scientific issues, there is also a financial issue, and such missions are very expensive. Even if we create a machine able to move twice as fast than Zone Parker, he still goes a decade for that to catch up with Amu. He'll be so far from the sun by then that his energy would become practically useless. To maintain the functioning of the apparatus, we'll need to use radio flood, thermoelectric generator. Duration of operation of such generators is decades old. True, over time the generator power output drops. But you should not be sad. Actually, chances of that. What exactly is this object? Somehow related to an extraterrestrial civilization. So small, no one wants to spend so much time and money. Organization complex, expensive and lengthy mission just to make sure of it. If Amo was discovered on approach to the solar system. For example, a few years before passing the point of his maximum approach by the sun, then it would be a whole different thing. And quite likely that a mission to him would be arranged. Certainly not to test the hypothesis and its alien origin. And because the study of an interstellar asteroid in itself is of great interest. Calculating all risks and possible costs, and that's hundreds of 1 million or even billions of dollars. Project Lyra was closed. To Venus. Forgotten planet, which it's time to remember. And that's where the Akatsuki space mission will help us. Started its scientific activity in December 2015. Today it's the only spacecraft which revolves around Venus. During his years of service, the probe transmitted a huge amount of data, and they keep replenishing monthly. For example, recently, Japanese device managed to get a lot of information, the atmosphere of Venus and its climate. He also managed to find streams of acid clouds, explain the mystery of inconstant duration, day and night of the planet, huge typhoons and inexplicable tidal capture. Since Earth and Venus are close and in size, comparing them is important in understanding the limits, habitability of rocky planets, similar sizes, characteristics of a neighboring planet. Is her tight atmosphere, the ability of its atmosphere to trap heat, leads to that. What at the temperature, its corresponding surface, able to melt lead. Not to mention the colonists. However, perhaps the weirdest feature with whom Akatsuki met is the speed of rotation of the Venusian atmosphere. Winds circle the planet with a purity 60 times greater. What happens her rotation? This phenomenon known as super-rotation. Exceeding the speed of 360 kilometers per hour in the upper clouds. Winds on vinyl are grounded considered fast. The surface of the planet is the opposite, spins very slowly. It orbits the sun in 225 Earth days. Venus day is 243 times longer than Earth day. Why Venus day turns out to be longer than a year, such a slow rotation can be common. among Earth-sized exoplanets, like the planets that make up the Meal System 1 and the exoplanets Proxima Centauri b, whose slow rotation, probably caused by gravitational tidal forces. As the Moon turns around the Earth, exoplanets in a state of tidal capture all the time turned one side to its star, resulting in one side of them lasting an eternal day, and on another continuous night. Once upon a time, in the ancient world there were only 5 planets. Mercury is Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The Earth at that time did not even belong to planets, since translated from Greek, planet translates to wandering. But the Earth did not wander among the stars. A lot has happened in the sky in 1,000 years. Solar and lunar eclipses happened. Supernova exploded. Comets appeared and disappeared, and meteorites fell. But with the planets there was always total order, not one extra, however, still overtime. This picture of the world began to change. 18th century English astronomy lover William Herschel, in his makeshift telescope, discovered an object different from star. He was bigger in size and a little, how it seemed to Herschel, very foggy. So the planet was discovered. Mid-19th century maths from France, Leverrier, using classical mechanics, based on Newton's laws, predicted the existence of the planet Neptune. Conclusions: it is based on the perturbation of the orbit of uranium. But by the end of the 19th century, astronomers of that time came to a consensus that Uranus has an impact and one more planet. Already in the early 20th century, the Mars explorer was looking for her, was barking Percival, possible places in the solar system where could be a new celestial body, which he called Planet X. And only 3 years later, specialists in the observatory lucky to capture this planet on for photographic plates. However, during this period the planet was very far away and practically not viewed. Few believed this story. The search was suspended for several years, and only in 1929, director of the observatory commissioned newcomer Clyde William resumed them. Young night specialist conducted starry sky shoots. Each section he fixed 3 times with a break in a few days, and then got information about celestial bodies who changed their position. And that's finally luck. A year later, he discovered a celestial body which moved through the starry sky. It was opened in 1930. 9th planet in the solar system, Pluto. The truth of doubts about Pluto's involvement, any gravitational disturbance in the motion of other planets, began to speak out immediately after its opening. The planet had a very faint brightness, which indicated a small size and mass, direct measurement of Pluto's mass. It was possible only years later, when his companion Horn was discovered. It turned out that Pluto, by physical characteristics, closer to asteroids than to the planets by only 0, as much as 10% of the Earth's mass. That's his gravitational potential, which one can hardly significantly affect the movement of uranium or Neptune. In 2005, astronomers discover a new object, which is further from the Sun than Pluto is. Irida, new space object, possessed quite weak shine. Given its remoteness, could have been assumed it is much larger and more massive than Pluto. Public taught news of the discovery of Planet X. And yes, about a year and a half, and Rita was considered 10th planet of the solar system. But not long in 2006, astronomers decided to revise criteria for planets and asteroids and what to do with those objects which do not fall under the existing classification. At the International Astronomical Union, Pluton and Irida got it. When communicating with a new class of celestial objects, dwarf planets, it's a cross between the big ones, planets and asteroids. At the same time, astronomers continue to discover other trans-Neptunian objects, celestial bodies of the solar system, orbits far beyond Neptune. among them Gray Hillbilly, Maki Maki, and many others. Of little interest to the scientific community. Grayso, significant elongation and inclination to the ecliptic plane. Its orbits suggest that without the influence of other heavenly bodies lay down such an orbit could not, which means mysterious planet X. Still not found. Recent hypothesis, proposed in September 2019, is that Planet 9 may not be a planet at all. Researchers allowed it could have been a primordial black hole. Unlike black holes, which are formed as a result of collapse, giant stars, it is believed that primary black holes formed due to gravitational disturbances less than a second after the Big Bang. And such an object would be so small, about 5 centimeters in diameter, that it will be very difficult to detect. True, this hypothesis was very quickly dispelled. Consider the next version, where it is claimed that this is not a planet or a black hole, and the star claims this hypothesis, that the Sun is a double star, for a distant and faint companion of this binary system. Even, and there is a name not my Zeta, counts what it could be a red or brown dwarf. This object can be detected, infrared telescope, with Earth orbit, and for years the infrared telescope at Weiss running noses thoroughly conducted a full sky survey, the results of which can be confirmed that in the vicinity of the Sun, within 26,000 astronomical units, nothing resembling Nemesis, or at least Jupiter with a hot bucket, most likely not. Of course, you can't claim it 100%, but still the probability of the existence of Planet X within this zone noticeably diminished. Is true. After completing a full infrared survey of the sky, Weiss telescope, several independent researchers drew attention to the similarity of orbit elements. Some trans-Neptunian objects, the orbit of these ice blocks turned out to be oriented. Equally that push to think. What oriented them so much? Some unknown massive body. And that doesn't need another star or planet. Compared to Jupiter, 5 or 10 times the size of the Earth. And such an object telescope at Weiss notice, of course couldn't refute this assumption. Took to astrophysicists Michael Brown and Konstantin Bodigan. They both are setting the task to debunk another myth about Planet X. Eventually came to a conclusion that there are enough reasons to talk about her seriously. Computer simulation was carried out, which confirmed the possibility, the existence of another planet with a mass of about 10 Earth masses. There are more half-8 orbits from 4 to 1.5 1,000 astronomical units. Same time, modeling explained many features, some other copper belt objects, and unexplained characteristics of the Sedna orbit, whose strong eccentricity can't be investigative outrage from Neptune and other massive objects in the Sedna orbit region, not discovered yet, and investigators claim the probability of finding a new planet is 90% until it is actually discovered. With a telescope, talk about the final opening of the wound. Nonetheless, calculated characteristics of the 9th planet, which will be used in future searches. Orbital parameters of Planet X will be a mirror parameter of trans-Neptunian objects, in particular gray. The orbit of the planet will be as elongated, eccentric, and tilted relative to the plane of the main planet's solar system, but directed in the other direction, respectively the helium of the planet, point of closest approach to the Sun. It will be 200 astronomical units. To the nearest point, an Ophelia maximum removal. Up to 1,200 astronomical units. A year on the 9th planet will last up to 20,000 winter years. That's how much it might take to complete the entire orbit. In order to influence planetoids, the planet will need a significant mass. Therefore, it is considered 10 times heavier than Earth, and 2 times larger, most likely, as well as Neptune and Uranus. Planet 9 will be an ice giant, ball of ice, rock and various gases, heavier than hydrogen and helium, way through the solar system, where Planet X collected its material, was very long, respectively. Its composition may differ from the assumptions. Either way, evidence of the existence of Planet 9, due to its gravitational influence on other bodies. If the planet exists, its gravity will affect other planets. Mathematical calculations in this case allow to calculate parameters of the searched planet. Near-term modeling prospects of Bodigan and Brown and their colleagues expect serious clarification based on the data, which astrophysicists hope to get after launch of a large survey telescope. I'll-See Observatory named after Faith Robin in Chile in 2022. Astronomers lay also high hopes for the Subaru telescope in Hawaiian Islands, which is considered one of the largest and quality telescopes in the world. The diameter of its main mirror is over 8 meters. In addition, it is able to work in optical and in infrared light. Waiting for these new events, we can only guess and guess. If in the solar system, another one fairly large celestial body, or we have already opened everything here, and it's time to move somewhere to another star, to their starting research. New worlds of other planetary systems. Of course, it will be a little sad to realize. Discover a new planet in the solar system. None of the astronomers of our time will succeed, or even an era of the future. But the universe is rich in surprises, and often happens that in chasing one openings, turns out, discovered completely different interesting objects, phenomena, or even fundamental laws. We all remember the story of Columbus, who wished to pave the sea route to India, but suddenly discovered a new continent. What W? We will keep our toes and wait for new discoveries, big and small, minor and vice versa, completely reversing the view of the universe. And we will definitely tell you about them in new releases. Angry but from this no less interesting space. We offer you a short list from sights on the moon you may not have heard or seen. There's a lava channel in front of you, inside which another lava channel is placed. Schrecker Valley in the Ocean of Storms. Apollo, a giant ancient impact crater, diameter about 524 kilometers, informally referred to as the Apollo Basin, in the southern hemisphere of the far side of the moon. 90 kilometers crater Copycat, which is supposedly 800 million years old. Cone-shaped lava flows. Lava flowing into the crater. Pi-Phi image about 600 meters wide. Lunar whirlpools in a sea of dreams, width 282 kilometers. Dynamic landscape. Aiken crater 135 kilometers wide and 6 kilometers deep. Complex landscape with pentagonal crater. Headley Mountain for kilometers height, 25 kilometers width. Cape Heraclides, surrounded by lava flows on 3 sides. Filmed by the MRAO orbiter. (312-kilometer Schrödinger crater). And there are wrinkles on the moon. Wrinkled ridge Dorsan Zirkel, stretching for 190 kilometers. Wrinkles are tectonic features formed by shrinking, tension on the surface of the moon. But here is a similar hell. Yes, this crater is really called Hell. Radius 330 kilometers. 110 kilometers fault. Wall height about 300 meters. Crater ghost. Crater ghost is crater flooded lava. Some can only see the crown from the erupted rock. Moscow Sea, one of two lunar seas. Located in the northwest part of the invisible Moonside Lands. This area lies almost a kilometer below average surface of the Moon. 40-kilometer crater Aristarchus, which is 450 million years old. Picator of the Man, almost 9 kilometers tall. There's a 9-meter cobblestone in front of you, riding on the Moon. Quite possible on the control panel. Lava Rivers Prince. 80 kilometers lava channels near the crater of Prince. Before you, wrong crater. Unlike most craters, he's not really round-shaped. It is believed that massive axed material, apparently on the right in the image, pushed the crater wall further north, thereby made it not round. But what caused the wall to collapse? Carved lava sinuous channel Headley. Formed during active volcanism on the Moon. Extraordinary mountains at the bottom. 77 kilometers Crater King. One more crater full of lava. 110 kilometers Gassendi Crater. The partially lava-filled bottom of the crater bowl is uneven. Emba system growth and many folds. 166 kilometers Alp Valley, crossing the Montes Alps mountain range. Sea East Lunar Sea, located on the western edge of visible land. Hemisphere of the Moon, radius 930 kilometers. 22 kilometers crater, which also contains a crater. Caldera collapsed crater. Winding channel, western half of the crater Posidonia. Chain of 23 Davy craters. Most likely education scenario. Crater chains. Comet or asteroid strike. Mountain and crater. Crater depth quiet almost 5 kilometers, but the height of the mountain is 1.5 kilometers. Flooded lava, 120 kilometers crater Litron. Judging by the name, possibly belongs to one of the Decepticons. Mountain range 600 kilometers long, named Foamed. Moon Mountains, located in the northern part of the visible side of the Moon, on the southeastern border of the Rainy Sea. 300-kilometer furrow of Oridy. Unlike the twisty grooves, which has a volcanic nature. Linear furrows are formed differently. It is believed that a linear groove has formed when part of the lunar crust dropped between two volume of rock. Crater Ina, little crater-like formation in the Lake of Happiness, on the visible side of the Moon. We hope that you liked the trip. We will be thankful if you leave feedback on the most liked places. And of course, we are waiting for you again on the Moon with friends. The 27th of June 1997 umbrella, passing Matilda at a minimum distance of 1,212 kilometers. In 25 minutes, managed to take more than 600 pictures of this asteroid. Then the device began to approach the ground again. The flight trajectory was over the south polar region of the planet. It allowed to get a number of unique images of Antarctica. And already in January 1998, getting extra acceleration due to a successful maneuver. In the gravitational field of the Earth, the world was directed towards its ultimate goal. Asteroid eras. Their meeting was scheduled for the 1st of October 1996, but not everything always goes according to plan. 21st December 1st 998. During a responsible braking maneuver, communication with the device was lost, and although after 27 hours she still managed to stop, time was missed, and reaching orbit around the asteroid became impossible. Mission leaders later discovered that there is an error in the onboard computer program. Computer counted. The engine burned too much fuel, and therefore simply disconnected as protective measure. Because of off, umbrella lost control, and solar panels have lost orientation to the sun. After restoring communication within 8 hours, control system has been reduplicated, and the spacecraft stabilized. Solar panels turned towards the sun, and the batteries started recharging. As a result of, managed to throw only a look at the asteroid Eros, and then from a very long distance. On December 23rd, the nurse swept past this minor planet at a distance of almost 1,000 kilometers, with a speed of about 1 kilometer per second. Zone missed, but the team was not discouraged, since there was a second attempt, a year later, that is, after another one unplanned vid apparatus around the sun. The flight trajectory was corrected, and thanks to her, Nerve went out on target February 2000. Within a few days, apparatus gradually reduced speed until he was captured by the gravitational field of the asteroid. The 14th of February 2000 was announced that Nerve went into orbit of asteroid Eros. Originally, the orbit height was 300 kilometers, but by May 2000, Umbrella lowered the height to 50, and in July to 35 kilometers. And finally, the exploration started. Asteroid with a diameter of 34 by 16 kilometers. Turned out to be an amazing object. His shape resembles a space peanut. Became a hallmark among others. It is because of the shape that the center shifts, gravity that creates extremely interesting effects. Moving in its orbit, Eros doesn't spin like spherical bodies. It tumbles like a boulder rolling down a hill. It also leads to gravitational force changes. However, it is very easy to overcome it. Man would have managed to leave Eros with a foot push, but the idea is so. Orbital characteristics of Eros. Its main attraction around the sun. He turns in one whole 70 Earth years around its own axis for 530 hours. As for the temperature regime, then the asteroid can both warm up to 100 C and cool down to minus 150 C. There are unusual furrows on Erosi, similar to the famous Martian canals, which proves its integrity. Another one remarkable anomaly, presence of about 1 million stones on Erosia placer, different size at the same time. The entire asteroid is completely covered in meteor craters. There are over 100,000. If you count only those, which are more than 15 meters in diameter, when meteorites collide with such a small body as Eros, stones and dust would have to fly in all directions. Here they stayed still. This observation changed astronomers' perception of how asteroids collide in space. Separately worth mentioning about valuable minerals, which are on Eros. In rough estimates, asteroid contains more gold, silver, copper, and other precious minerals than humanity has produced in its entire history. It is also worth considering that Eros did not go through the active melting stage, like our planet. If the Earth's crust contains a negligible fraction of metals, then in the asteroid they are distributed evenly. As a result of the spacecraft in asteroid orbit managed to stop, that Eros did not go through the thermal differentiation stage then. Heating was not exposed to warm up. The composition of minerals on the surface of the asteroid is similar to that of what is found among the meteorites of Handrites. This lets assume that Eros is the original building block, not part of a larger body. Eros turned out to be a tiny world with a wavy horizon, craters, boulders, and valleys. Three-dimensional image from the device NIR shows contrasts between light and darkness and allows you to estimate the size of the structure on the surface. The smallest parts are about 30 meters size. The 2nd of December 2001 sounder managed to land on the surface of the asteroid. During decline, apparatus transmitted highly detailed surface images. The last picture was taken from a height of 700 meters and covered an area 33 meters wide. When landing, the speed of the probes was reduced. Before 5 kilometers per hour it left its orbit and descended to the surface of the asteroid. Umbrella successfully landed on a distant asteroid and stood firm on the ground in a 10-kilometer shallow notch. Central part of the asteroid is amazing, but landing on Eros wasn't originally planned. Her idea appeared when the device has exhausted its resource, shouldn't have been thrown in space. But despite all the fears, the Umbrella not only successfully completed the most difficult maneuver, but also continued to transmit valuable scientific information. We're dropping to the ground. The apparatus continued to shoot the surface of Eros with an unprecedented, for that time, permission. Only for a year of its work, he supplied researchers with valuable information and sent over 160,000 photos. The machine was not prepared and adapted to work on the surface of the asteroid. He worked on it for a little over 2 weeks, transmit data to the ground, and already on February 28th the missionary was completed. Umbrella Shoemaker became the first artificial satellite of the asteroid, first in the history of mankind. Artificial object made a soft landing on Jupiter is the largest, 5th farthest planet from the Sun. Its mass is twice that of all the planets, solar system, combined. This is a gas giant. The undeniable fact is that it has a very thick vibe. Most of its mass. As we already know, the cycles on Jupiter are giant storms. Wind speed on the planet can exceed 600 kilometers per hour. The entertaining thing is that, unlike the Earth, where atmospheric circulation occurs due to the difference in solar heating, in equatorial and polar regions, on Jupiter, the effect of the Sun on this process is negligible. Winds arise due to heat flows coming from the center of the planet and energy which occurs during the rapid motion of Jupiter around its axis. But what lurks inside this planet? Much more interesting. Already on approach to Jupiter we will see an amazing phenomenon. Global storm with lightning and thunderstorms. The area in which these lightning forms, between 40 and 70 kilometers on the subject of clouds, What can we observe? Hence, zombies captured not the lightning themselves, but only the tops of the clouds illuminated by them. But we wanted to see what is located beyond them, and much more will be needed here than just an umbrella orbiting Jupiter. The fact is that optics and coming infrared range allows you to umbrella Jupiter only to about 4 atmospheres of depth. That is approximately 40 kilometers. Millimeter waves can break through to 100 atmospheres. It's approximately 260 kilometers. Umbrella you now listening on the wave of 50 centimeters. Maybe something is hard to make out. Up to 600 kilometers where the pressure reaches 1,000 atmospheres and the temperature is 1,500 C. Maybe the lander will be able to cope. For example, Gallery in 1995 could dive 160 kilometers, up to 22 atmospheres and 150 C. But how do we understand this minuscule little extreme depths of future umbrellas of Jupiter? Still considered, limit to 100 atmospheres or 330 centimeters. And if you fantasize on a grand scale, then you can come up with such a scheme. Take a spherical bath escape from monocrystalline diamond with walls a couple of meters thick, reinforced belt, cover with something hydrogen stable. Put a nuclear reactor on it for active cooling. Stuffed with instruments and dumped on the planet. Will there be a person there? It's already up to you. Of course it's fantastic, but fiction then scientific. Our umbrella hit the road. What will he see during the dive? Already at the 10th kilometer we will find an excess of hydrogen, which is 90% in Jupiter. It's compressed there to a density of 200 kilograms per cubic meter, partially turned into metal, and by component, resembles a cross between gasoline and mercury. Of course, if they could suddenly others dissolve. But here's helium raised a riot for its rights, and in this mixture does not want to dissolve, and therefore gathers in drops and sows down, gel rain. And this rain does not fall anywhere, because even deeper is the solubility of helium and hydrogen, is recovering, and the drops dissolve without a trace. All this happens at 6,000 C. Word, about the same place the magnetic field of Jupiter is born, and then our umbrella breaks through the clouds of ammonia. 0.7 atmospheres, ammonium sulfidohydro, 2 atmospheres and water ash to about 7 atmospheres. Continue diving for 100 kilometers. 500 atmospheres and temperatures above 1,000 C. Umbrella passes through a thin haze of clouds, at least according to the latest data. So it is or not no one, of course does it know, but gold is pretty inert, and for metal relatively volatile. So physics it doesn't contradict. Per 1,000 atmospheres gas density will reach 20 kilograms per cubic meter, and just gas this environment will not be considered. Approximately the same place. Cloudiness from sodium sulfide. Depth 700 kilometers. 4,800 atmospheres and more than 2,000 C. Magnesium silica clouds are floating outside. True in appearance, it is difficult to notice, and in general, it is unlikely that he will impress anyone. The truth is that the view is from the porthole. Little will be different from the view. For example, in a glass melting furnace, from the inside it will look about the same, and our review will be a few centimeters. Such is the transparency of matter in those conditions. What illustrate not only our fantasy and our ways of perceiving are helpless under conditions, far from normal, but amazing. Our theories continue to work in them and predict a lot of interesting. Our umbrella sank as deep as ever. 500,000 atmospheres, 500-600 kilometers and more 5,000 C. Hydrogen starts dissociating. What can be considered the beginning of his transformation into metal? Closest visual analogies of this: dissolution of sodium in liquid ammonia. As the concentration of free electrons increases and the solution darkens, loses transparency and increases electrical conductivity, deeper than 2 million atmospheres, iron turns out to be soluble in metal hydrogen, and with rocky minerals it happens. Above 5 million atmospheres and 10,000 degrees, what is achieved at a quarter of the depth of Jupiter? Then its matter is. Probably, these are super dense and at the same time overheated. Partially, ionized broth made of metallic hydrogen, with mixtures of other elements. Could something more intriguing be happening there? Rather than uniform mixing of this broth, this question is not too many, gives rest, so we'll leave it for later. Because our fantastic umbrella just dissolved and became part of Jupiter. From our amazing